Have you ever fantasized about pivoting your channel in a fresh new direction? As someone who's been on YouTube for nearly 10 years now, and after passing the 200,000 subscriber mark over New Year's of 2025, admittedly, I still don't think my channel is quite pointing in the direction it needs to be for long term success. So in 2025, I'm adopting a new strategy for how I can achieve potentially life changing growth for my channel and business by following 5 simple rules for success. And part of this strategy has resulted in the renaming of this podcast to Full Time YouTuber as a way of aligning my branding more in the direction I plan on going in the coming years. So, in this episode of Full Time YouTuber, I share exactly what these 5 rules for success are and how you can use them to make 2025 your best year ever on YouTube. Hey, I'm Ben, and I help YouTubers who are entrepreneurs at heart grow their channels into profitable businesses. This podcast is for creators who want to help their audiences through informational content, not to chase fame or subscribers, even though that may come, but rather to build a business that generates revenue while you sleep so you can live your dream lifestyle. Now, I know it's a common thing at the start of a new year to want to set a bunch of New Year's resolutions. I've had a love-hate relationship with New Year's resolutions over the years, and in 2025, I'm very much against them. I don't think New Year's resolutions work, mostly because to set a long-term goal and stick to it, you need to have high levels of motivation, and you don't get a sudden surge of motivation at the start of the year that magically carries you through the entire year. That is, unless something very serious happens. Usually you've got to be at a really high point or a really low point to get long-term motivation to stick to a big long-term goal. But that said, with the starting of a new year, as a YouTuber, it's also a great time to just stop and reflect on what you did last year. Go back and look at your channel, look at the metrics, subscribers, views, and so on, and try and learn some lessons based on what that data suggests. Then with those lessons, I think it's a really good idea to pivot your strategy a bit so the high points of the previous year can become your new norm. And I've been doing this while I've been on holiday in Southeast Asia over the break, and I've come up with a new strategy that really shakes things up a bit and changes something that instinctually I've been doing over the past 10 years that ultimately isn't helping me get to the next level. And that is, I wasn't always prioritizing profit over fame. Let me deconstruct that a little bit. So, as YouTubers, often we start our YouTube channels, yes, with the idea of helping a lot of people and maybe starting a business out of it. But I think there's also a part of us deep down that wants approval and wants to become very famous and well known. And when you're walking down the street, people come up to you and say, "Hey, I follow your YouTube channel. Oh my God, can I take a selfie?" Go on, admit it, as if you wouldn't like that. And while this isn't a primary or conscious goal that we all have, I think deep down we cling onto this for a very long time. Even as you start building a small cult following and you are helping your ideal audience, part of you still wants to take it to the next level purely so you can become more famous. And one of my biggest insights in 2024 is that I had this belief of feeling like I need to prove myself and become famous as something that guided my channel and the direction I was going. This can result in you making videos on topics you're not passionate about because you think there's a lot of views to be had there, and ultimately it steers you so far off course that you don't even realize it. Or maybe you start acting the same way your favorite YouTubers act with their mannerisms, and you try to become the next Mr. Beast or Casey Neistat. I know at one point I thought I was going to become the next Peter McKinnon when he first started his YouTube channel around cinematography and photography. And even though I wouldn't admit it, everything I was doing was trying to become a million subscriber channel purely so I could become a celebrity like him. Well, let me tell you something. As someone who is already quote unquote famous on YouTube, at least, I don't know, maybe a C-grade celebrity on YouTube, it's really not all it's cracked up to be, and it doesn't really help you in the long term, especially if you have financial goals in life. I don't know about you, but I've got a mortgage to pay, I've got a lifestyle to fund, my wife and I are starting to save for a baby, And fame isn't going to pay for those things as much as I wish it would. But what is going to pay for those things is running my YouTube channel like it's a profitable business and making important decisions about my channel and the direction I'm going like an entrepreneur would, not like a celebrity would. And here's what I need you to understand. Fame and profit are two very different things. They do not go hand in hand. You don't get paid because you're famous. In fact, some of the richest people in the world you've probably never heard of because their focus is on running a business rather than becoming well known. So in 2025, my primary objective is to prioritize profit over fame. Yes, you can still help a lot of people and grow your YouTube channel in the process, but if you can't pay the bills at the same time, you're not going to help anyone. Therefore, the more financially sustainable you can make your YouTube channel, the longer you'll be doing it, and in turn, the more people you're going to help. So with that said, I've put together 5 rules that I'm going to be following in 2025 that will help me prioritize profit over fame. And if your channel isn't quite where you want it to be, chances are these 5 rules will help you too. Okay, so rule number 1 that I'll be following is to have a specific target audience in mind with every single piece of content I make. And the characteristics of that audience do not change from video to video. Have you ever gone out and made a video about your primary topic on YouTube and then the next week made something on a completely different topic and the week after made a third video on another topic yet again? In your head, you might have justified the 3 topics as being very closely linked, but then in hindsight, looking back weeks, months, and years later, you realize that they are 3 very different topics and each of them has a different kind of audience with different qualities. Or maybe you just tend to oscillate between multiple topics throughout a calendar year. Well, what this does is it muddies the message of your channel and leaves viewers confused about what you're all about. If you want to be a successful entrepreneur on YouTube, you need to know your target audience very well, and you need to give them the exact tools that they're looking for, because the more you can connect with your specific target audience through great value-packed videos, the faster they're going to trust you and therefore the faster they're going to buy from you. I can admit that I'm super guilty of this. Over the past 10 years, I've probably made videos on around 15 different topics in total. When I first started, I was teaching tiny planet photography. Then I started posting some random business mindset videos. Then I moved into 360 video and virtual tours. Then VR, video editing, DaVinci Resolve, CapCut, marketing, YouTube, and every time I brought on a new topic, it didn't feel like it was out of place because there was only a 10% pivot left or right. But after 10 plus of these pivots, I was now 100 degrees to the right and so far from where I started that there was no consistent theme across my channel going back over the years, leaving newcomers to my channel extremely confused about what Ben Claremont is all about. So in 2025, I aim to correct that, since my direction on YouTube in 2025 is to help YouTubers make better videos that grow their channels and revenue. Every single video I'll be making this year will be serving that exact audience, because I do plan on releasing products and coaching and all kinds of things around helping YouTubers in the future. It's really important that I attract the exact target audience to my channel now so I can bear the fruits of that later on. So have a think about it. Are you sending mixed messages to your audience at all? Are you covering multiple topics that muddy the target audience member that you're trying to connect with? If so, I would really suggest narrowing it down to one type of audience. It doesn't have to be super specific, like people who use VR for meditation, for example, but it does need to have boundaries around it. Like, my target audience is going to be YouTubers who want to make better videos that grow their channel and revenue. So every single piece of content I make from now on will be videos that I think that type of audience member would enjoy. Rule 2 I'm following is don't attract leads that aren't qualified. What do I mean here? Well, leads refer to the business side of things. When you get a lead, it usually means an email on your email list. And it's actually surprisingly easy to get lots and lots of emails by offering free content and downloads that people can enter their email to receive. But the thing is, it's so easy to attract unqualified leads by doing this. Just like with posting content online, if you're collecting any and every email address you can get your hands on, regardless of the boundaries and characteristics around the type of person that owns the email, this again will attract a very wide and untargeted audience, many of which won't ever be qualified enough to buy something from you. And this matters the most when it comes to selling stuff. If you're trying to market cat products to a camera audience, you've got no chance in hell. But try marketing cat products to a cat-loving audience and you'll sell out. Again, this is something I've been guilty of, including in 2024, and that is attracting too many leads that just aren't qualified for the direction I'm going in. Something I cut down on at the very end of last year was my lead magnets, aka the email collectors. At the start of the year, I was offering around 10 of them on 8 different topics. Now, at the end of the year, I'm only offering 4 on 2 different topics. This is because I only want the most qualified people on my email list that I can continue to give value to through great email content and eventually one day convince to buy something from me. And if you do have an email list of your own, you also need to think of it this way. A big email list means nothing if they are not qualified. Again, you don't want to be offering a product to people one day that they're not even remotely interested in. If you don't have an email list yet and you're thinking about it, I would say yes, absolutely consider it, since it's a great way to attract qualified audience members who are the most engaged and most want to hear from you. When you have something new to say, or if one day you release a product, your email lists are the ones most likely to convert on that product. So if you're starting an email list on day one, I would suggest this. Don't attract unqualified leads. If you're a yoga channel and you plan on releasing a yoga course a year from now, offer a yoga lead magnet and let the qualified leads come in so you can convert them easily a year from now. Rule 3 for 2025 is consistent and literal branding. Branding is such an important topic. When you are trying to reach an audience at scale, you really need to dumb everything down to the most basic level and make it understandable by the widest audience possible. It's very easy to come across clever or cute in your branding. You think you've got this really great idea for a channel, a video, a product, but in reality, you're the only one that understands what those specific words in that combination mean, and the average person walking down the street would have no clue. Well, this is why you need to be as simple and literal as possible with your branding. Even if 2 words make complete sense separately, if you put them together and they don't make sense, don't use it. Everything you do needs to communicate a clear and easy to understand message. And that is the reason that I changed the name of this podcast. While The Creator's Journey was a great name and I really liked it when I first heard it, knowing now that my target audience are people who aspire to become full-time YouTubers, literally the most literal name I could possibly come up with for the branding of this podcast in this new direction would be exactly that, full-time YouTuber. While I'm sure many people understood the concept of the creator's journey, there's still an element of misinterpretation. You could interpret creator as a photographer, a designer, and you could interpret journey as a deep and meaningful spiritual journey, walking off into the sunset, thinking long and hard about my life. And while most people won't misinterpret it, the more people have to think about your branding, the less impact it's going to have. Especially in the 2-second world we live in with social media just being so addictive, it's so important to have branding that people can understand within 2 seconds. This also applies to having many different names for you on different platforms. Maybe you use your personal name in one place, you might have a name for your channel in another, and you address people on your email list as something completely different. When you have all of these different branding names, again, it muddies your message and confuses people. Whereas in an ideal world, you'll want to choose one thing and one thing only that you become known by. This is why I switched back in the day. I was called Life in 360 and I changed my channel to Ben Claremont because I know my name is not ever going to change and I want people to get to know my name. I changed my Instagram handle to Ben Claremont. I changed my YouTube to Ben Claremont and all of my other social media platforms just for that consistency factor. And going forward in the direction I'm going with helping full-time YouTubers, I feel that full-time YouTuber is a great fit for this branding, and it's why I've called the podcast that, and I'll be calling my upcoming course and community full-time YouTuber, which is coming in around 2 months' time, wink wink. And while it was tempting to call the podcast something different from my paid product, I realized that it's kind of hard to get people to remember even just one thing. And if you expect them to remember multiple names and automatically connect them together at the same speed you would yourself, I'd say you're being unrealistic. So again, try and keep your branding as consistent as possible. Have the same name, whether it's your name or a brand name or both, everywhere, but don't have more than 2 between your personal name and your brand name. And again, make it literal. Don't be clever and cute. Just make it easy to understand within 2 seconds. Rule 4 for success in 2025 is to post on less platforms. Yeah, you heard me right. Less platforms. This was one of the mistakes I made in 2024, was that I said to myself, I'm going to post on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, email, LinkedIn, and I'm going to do it all minimum of once a week, ideally 2 or 3 times. Has anyone ever stuck to that, by the way? There's honestly no way you could keep up on that many platforms posting that consistently. It's very unrealistic. But even if you could say once per week or once every 2 weeks, each of these platforms has a very different strategic approach to it, and the types of content you make for each is also going to be very different. So the more you dilute your focus towards multiple platforms, the more it takes away from your primary platforms. So in 2025, I'm cutting this down substantially. My primary platform is YouTube, followed by email and podcast. Forget about everything else. I know that my target audience of aspiring full-time YouTubers don't really use Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and all the other platforms anywhere near as much as they use YouTube itself, email, and listening to podcasts. Therefore, I'd rather make better and more consistent content on those 3 platforms in 2025 so I can keep attracting my ideal target audience and not get distracted chasing the dream of going viral on TikTok or Instagram, making videos for an audience who aren't even my ideal audience. So think about this for yourself. What's your number 1 platform? Well, given the fact you're listening to a podcast called Full-Time YouTuber, my guess is that it would be YouTube. And if you're still a small channel under 10,000 subscribers, I'd honestly cut everything else out except maybe sharing your YouTube videos around in Facebook groups, since you still really need to establish yourself on YouTube, and posting on other platforms is just taking time away from growing your YouTube channel. Rule 5 for 2025 is another one that's going to seem a bit weird, but here it is. My goal is to post less videos. When I look back at my year in review on YouTube in 2024, I'd say around 30% of my videos were successful, and my definition of success is 50,000 views or more. And in total, roughly a third of my videos achieved that. One of them hit a grand slam and passed 1 million views. That was my DaVinci Resolve tutorial. And the rest got anywhere between 50,000 and 500,000. The other 66% of my channel bombed, which for me is between 3 and 50,000 views. So what I mean when I say I'm going to make less videos in 2025 is that I'm going to try my best to only make that top 33%, but do it a bit more often. So think about it. If you could take your top 1/3 of videos from last year and double the output of videos that perform that well, you could get double the results only doing 2/3 of the amount of work. And what I noticed that top 33% of videos had in common is that they were the quote-unquote definitive videos on certain topics like CapCut, DaVinci Resolve, video editing, and so on. They weren't like the 10th most important thing you need to know about a topic. They were the definitive guides on the topic. And every niche has hundreds of subtopics, by the way, that you could make make definitive guides about. But in short, my strategy for 2025 is going to be making these definitive guides to must-know topics for aspiring YouTubers who want to go full-time. Because it only takes one single video doing really well to keep your channel alive and thriving. With my DaVinci Resolve video, for example, it passed 1 million views in a year and is single-handedly responsible for thousands of dollars of ad revenue per month, thousands of subscribers, tens of thousands of views, and hundreds of emails on my email list just from one video. So can you imagine if you had a whole channel filled with videos like that? This would build your YouTube business so fast it would make your head spin. So definitely a lot to think about here between these 5 rules. In fact, I'm going to set you a challenge, and that is to follow at least one of these 5 rules. Again, I'll give them to you one more time. Rule 1 is to have a specific target audience in mind with everything you make. Rule 2 is don't attract unqualified leads. Rule 3 is consistent and literal branding. Rule 4 is post on less platforms. And Rule 5 is post less videos, but go for the definitive topics that make you the most revenue. Now, as to whether these 5 rules bring me success by the end of 2025 is a different story. I've got my fingers and toes crossed, but from 10 years on YouTube, having made every mistake in the book, at least it feels that way, I have a very good feeling about them, and I'm confident that 2025 is going to be a great year from implementing these 5 things. But if you want to find out, I will still be making this podcast at the end of the year, so feel free to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to leave me a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. It would be very much appreciated. If you could leave a couple of words as well, that would be awesome. I wish you all the best of luck in 2025. I know you're going to crush it on YouTube. And hey, don't forget, you're just one video away.